Good afternoon, everyone. It's noon on a Wednesday, which means it's time for another Kuker-Ranken Lunch and Learn. It's great to have you here. We see some old friends, some new friends that are joining us this afternoon. And for those of you that were scheduled for the Wednesday presentation, thank you for your grace and understanding. We had to move to today. Now, today we're going to be talking about the new Autel V3 RTK aircraft. So I'll just pick that up real quick here. This is the new V3. It's an awful lot like the older, if I can get my hand wrapped around it here, it's an awful lot like the older V2. In fact, they're almost undetectable but a couple of small things. So we'll be diving into that a little bit more as we get rolling through the presentation here. So I'm going to go ahead and just get right into our slide portion, and we'll work with a little bit of both here. Just a little bit about Kuker-Ranken. For those of you who aren't familiar with Kuker-Ranken, we've been in business for nearly 100 years, and we have stores all around the country. Unfortunately, I don't have a photo of our newer Boise store in this screen. Now, the EVO II series has been around for a while. Some of you have already worked with them. The EVO II V3 is just an extension and an update overall of what that V2 and the original V1 models are. Again, they're fairly indistinguishable on the outside. There's a few differences we'll look at here in just a moment. But one of the differences is that, like anything where we have newer, faster components and chips that allow us to do different things, greater memory, etc., we can do more with the V3. So the V3 system has the RTK hat that's screwed on top of it, or I should say the RTK system is available for it. These are the two models that we predominantly offer at Kuker-Ranken is the RTK models. And the reason that we're predominantly focused on RTK is because Kuker-Ranken's moniker is, or our logo and our company statement is, a tradition in precision. We're predominantly interested in finding precise or precision equipment with great accuracy for our customers that are coming from the survey world, the construction world, inspection world, and of course, now just the general mapping world where precision is pretty important. And the only way to achieve the kinds of precision that our customers, our general customers, are looking for is with the use of either RTK or PPK workflows. We're not going to go deeply into what those two workflows are, but for those of you unfamiliar with RTK, it means real-time kinematic. And RTK antennas are superior to standard antennas that you would find on most of the drones that are out there because they're able to capture more constellations as opposed to just connecting to one constellation. Additionally, RTK antenna systems and RTK drone systems with the right software also allow us to connect to correctional networks. We'll talk about those as we get just a little farther here. Let me go ahead and bring my screen back up. All right, so I mentioned greater precision with RTK. I'm just going to quickly show what RTK does bring to the table here. Some of you may have seen these slides as I do use them somewhat frequently. Up here, we've got a target. You can see this orange X that's painted on the ground. And as the non-RTK aircraft is flying, the non-RTK drone believes that it is right here. So what we're really looking to target is right here. So you can see that there's a little bit of a difference. You know, that's pretty close to 12 feet, which is about 3 meters, the mean average of how far off a single GPS signal is going to be, such as your cell phone. When we use just an RTK antenna, well, all of a sudden we get our projected point and our actual point really close together. Now, this is an RTK antenna only. In other words, it's still flying autonomously. There are no correctional networks that are being inserted into the photographs through the base station. So this is just the antenna being added to the aircraft. Now, when we connect this to a network, you can see we're very, very tight. So there's our actual point, and here's our projected point. So we're within a centimeter, which is about what we expect when we're dealing with these products. Sometimes we're going to see a little bit of slip, and you might be in the 3 to 4 to 5 centimeter ranges. It depends on the scale of your operation, the integrity of your RTK signal. There's a few different variables, but overall, this is one of the quickest ways for us to be able to work. For those of you who are a little bit familiar with this industry, or I should say with entrant networks and correctional networks, the The system can work in either an RTK or in a PPK network if you don't have good signal integrity. So we can either work real-time kinematic or in post-process kinematic with this particular drone series. So regardless of what your flight situation is, if precision is your need, this system can give it to you. Couple of things to identify the differences. When we're looking at the V2 units, it's got V2 printed in silver there on the top, and we just have a circle around the Autel A. In the V3 series, you can see it pretty quickly because you've got the V3 silk screened on there, and then the Autel A is silk screened in a white color. Additionally, the case is quite different for the V3 series because the V3 series comes with the smart controller that we'll have a look at here in just a moment. Now, a couple of other updates that are here and have occurred. So when we're looking at the V2, we're looking at the V2 with a FLIR or an I-ray sensor. The V3 is I-ray only, and it's got contrast enhancement, which gives us better post-processing access. Plus, we are able to get into FLIR tools with these products. You can get the 640T, which allows us to use the I-ray or the infrared unit, and that allows us to use tools like IRPC to do some photo editing or photo analysis. And then if you have the 640R in the V3, that is a FLIR product that allows you to access the FLIR tools system. Now the V2, we've got a little bit larger CMOS sensor in there. So there's some differences where this has grown overall. One of the bigger differences is that they have reduced the they've increased the amount of the ISO. So if you need to be working in darker environments, you're going to be able to get a little bit more data in there. One of the other things that's there is some noise suppression, which keeps the noise in a dark environment reduced by quite a bit. So then moving down below, you'll notice we've got a little bit of a difference in image transmission distance, and that's because the new Skylink 2.0 system has a better signal stability, and it's able to reach out a little bit farther. Now, of course, we still have to operate in VLOS operation, so we need to operate visual line of sight. However, the greater signal stability and penetration give us a more confident video signal regardless of where we're working. We've recently had the V2 down on the Las Vegas Strip, which is a very, very noisy Wi-Fi environment, and it managed itself significantly better than the V1 and original V2s did. A couple of other things that are there is the system does have greater heat dissipation holes. For many of you, this is a non sequitur. It really doesn't matter very much. But out here in the heat of Las Vegas and the state of Arizona, any of the hotter areas, we're really grateful that the aircraft can cool down a little bit better, gives us a little bit better operation, and of course we don't have to worry quite as much about our batteries. And the obstacle avoidance didn't change, so that's something that is pretty well the same on this system. Now you have a new smart controller, and this is the new smart controller here that you can see. So the smart controller that you're seeing here is very similar to the original smart controller. We're going to look a little bit more at that in just a bit, but one of the things that Autel has changed out is that system comes with a smart controller as opposed to the smaller controller that came with the V2 series. Now, other things that have shifted a little bit, and our flight time hasn't really changed. And keep in mind, these flight times are best case scenarios that Autel is winding out. And this has been the case with all the different drone manufacturers. You're going to be very fortunate to see 42 minutes of flight time or 40 minutes of flight time. You're really going to experience more around the 37, 38. So there is some reduction from what the manufacturer tells you. Now, of course, you can see here, as soon as we add in a strobe or a spotlight, that shifts quite a bit. But we have a little bit more range in our vertical range, so we can go to 7,000 meters as opposed to 6,000 meters. Same wind resistance. It's a Beaufort 8, which means 48 miles per hour. Again, the smart controller reaches out a little bit farther at 15 kilometers. And you've got quite a bit of storage here at 128 gigs built into the system as opposed to the 8 gigabytes that we had before. And as mentioned, we have access to all of the different constellations. Now, for those of you that had the V1, you might remember the live deck. That was a very popular feature with the V1 aircraft. And the live deck went away in V2 due to some challenges in the global supply chain and chip shortages that you might all remember during the pandemic. But Autel is bringing back the live deck. So we do have the live deck 2 coming back very soon. And the live deck 2, we should see shipping in another month or so. So there is a live deck 2 that's coming our way. It'll still be a 1080p, 60 frame per second video stream, just like the older live deck system was. It's got the ability to auto switch between bands, which the previous system did not have. It only worked in 2 of the bands as well. We only had a 6 or 7 kilometer range in the old system. Battery life is about the same, and it is now IP43 weather resistant. Now that's not amazing, but it's also not terrible. It means you could leave it out on a table in a light rain, or if you forgot to pick it up in a kind of a light rain, it will still be just fine and function as we would expect it to function with. So what about some other questions that you might have? So what frequencies does the V3 support? Well, we've got 900 megahertz, 2.4, and 5.8. You may see some marketing for 5.7G. That is in Japan only. That is not available to us in the United States. Does it have dual control mode? No, it does not at this particular time, but they are expecting that with the new V3 model, we will have dual mode control. So what that means is we can use one control for a student, one control for a trainer, or it might be that we're going to have one person flying the aircraft while someone else is controlling the camera. So we can have independent control of camera, and then we have the other pilot that's managing all of the flight components. This is a pretty common method of working in high-risk environments, or when you're working in cinema or film, television, broadcast environments, where one person is focused solely on flying the aircraft, focused on looking at the aircraft, while the other operator is exclusively looking through the screen and operating just the camera, and whether it's controlling aperture or exposure controls, etc., or gimbal tilt, etc. So that's a great benefit. So one of the questions is, can EVO II Series V3 be controlled by Sky Command when that becomes available without using their Nest? And yes, of course, that's the case, because the Nest may not be immediately available. Another question is about whether V2, V3 models have interchangeable batteries. That's a kind of a big deal, because when you've got one of these older models that you see here, so this is the V2, we certainly don't want to have to buy new batteries. In a case like in our house, we've got a couple dozen of the V2 series. Boy, we'd really hate to not be working with those, working with those batteries. So one of the questions here is, will the Live Deck 2 be compatible with the V2 system? The answer to that is unfortunately no. So they are entirely different chips, and the new Live Deck will not be compatible with previous versions, V1 or V2. The Live Deck is Android-based. The other system was not Android-based. You were able to use an iPhone or an Android phone as secondary camera control through that Live Deck. It is now an Android-based system. I don't know whether we'll be able to use an iPhone to control camera through that, but the internal series of the new Live Deck is Android-based, which means we'll be able to control it via an Android device. I want to talk a little bit about why we've got this particular camera that's here. So I do want to mention one last thing here. You heard Sky Command, et cetera. As they roll out new software, we will see some new features in that software. So let's have a look. For those of you who haven't seen it before, we're going to have a look at the EVO II software that's available to us. There we go. So you see a map that's up there. This is exactly the same as it used to be in terms of creating maps and how these things work. There's a couple of differences under the hood. Let me just turn my aircraft on here so that you'll be able to see all of the menu features. And you'll note it sounds the same when it opens up as the other systems do. There we go. Right now, once we get these two things connected and we're hooked up to everything, then in other words, the drone and the system are connected. We're going to go and we're going to be able to create mission profiles and do different things. It's asking me if I want to return to the mission that I had just a moment ago. I don't have any real interest in putting that together. So if we were to put in an address here, let's put in, there you go. So we've got a piece of property that needs to be developed right here. And let's just zoom in a little bit more. So there's a piece of property here that's just about ready to go into development. To create a mission in here, it works exactly the same way as the older versions of Explorer did. So we can create a project real quick there. There we go. So there's our mission plan. We have the same adjustments and parameters. You'll notice a few different things in here. So you see a relative altitude switch. Our speed switch hasn't changed there. That's the same. Front side overlap are exactly the same. Finish action, what do we want to do? Go home or hover. These are all the same, and course angle is, of course, still the same. One of the things that you may notice, and this is available in the current version of Explorer, is elevation optimization. So we essentially have a sort of a ground terrain control here. Then you also see a sunny weather, which can be bypassed by using manual camera controls. And then we can have coordinated turns, which smooth our turns out. So these are a couple of newer features that you see brought to the application from before. So let's get out of here for just a moment. I don't need to save that mission. We'll go to our camera selection here. And we get up into our top menu here, flight control. None of these things have really changed. You see the aircraft ascent and descent speed, which are newer features for those of you who haven't updated in a while. This is the RTK feature. This is where you would put in your NTRIP host port. For those of you that are using a variety of different systems, we'll use our mount point as an auto mount point in there. So we'll just select that auto mount point in there to use the system. And when we get into our general screen here, there we go. Get into our general screen here, you'll notice that pretty much everything is the same. There's a couple of things you want to pay attention to when you're operating your V2 versus V3 is your battery updates. Although Autel would disagree with me, I would suggest not updating your batteries if you're bringing your V2 batteries into V3. Right. Other things that you'll notice here is under image transmission, we still have the high definition smooth, but we don't have some of the other displays that are there. Through here, we can adjust the customizable buttons. This is something that's a little bit different than what we had before. So there's some new features that are in the system that I think you'll overall really appreciate. And one of the notes I see here is, are there V3 or V2 for V3 trade-in options? At KR, we haven't worked anything like that out just yet. It's something we certainly would be interested in looking at, but we need to understand better what the market's looking to do. There are people who are very happy working with V1s and V2s. Many people are going to want to, of course, begin their fleet with a V3, but if you've got existing fleets, reach out and we'll certainly talk to you about your opportunities and what we might be able to do to help you. Let's talk about what kind of precision you get. I was recently at the CES show here in Las Vegas, and I spoke to some people from the drone world, and they were telling us, they were telling people in their booth that they got extremely fine precision with the EVO II RTK series. Well, extremely fine is pretty subjective. So if you're talking to a surveyor, he's going to say, well, a centimeter is good, but I wouldn't call that extremely fine. If you're talking to someone from the construction industry, they're going to be very satisfied with a single centimeter. So when we're dealing with things like as-built, or if we're working on layout, or if we're working on contours, topos, things like that, system has far more precision than you really need to do in those kinds of scenarios. So we're basically looking at 0.4 of an inch. If you want to look down at your pinky nail on your pinky finger, it's about that size. And that's the kind of precision that we're going to get. Then, now bear in mind, we're also going to, on the Z-axis, in other words, the vertical axis, we're going to see an accuracy of about 1.5 centimeters. So it's 1.5 times the value. So we combine that data with all of the pixels that are going to come into the camera. The higher the resolution is, the greater the precision is. Again, I've heard rumors or people talking in mapping forms. No, the resolution of the camera has nothing to do with anything. Well, it absolutely does. And this is why the 6K camera is great. So for example, if we're dealing with a very small sensor, or if we're flying very, very high, we're going to have a low ground sampling distance. That's what GSD stands for, is ground sampling distance. So when we have higher resolution, when we have more pixels, or we have a bigger sensor, we get more data, more finite data that we can use to calculate our images. And if you'd like to see this for yourself, go out and fly a stockpile with a small imager camera, and then find a higher grade imager camera, and run both of them through a tool like Pix4D and look at the difference in stockpile calculations. That's a really easy way to identify it quickly without using specialized tools. So just go fly a mound of dirt, and you'll get an idea of what the difference looks like between the two. So, where do you get one of these? How do you get a V3 system? Well, we've got them in stock at KukerRanken right now. So we're very happy to deliver one to you, either in person if you're in the Western states, or via UPS or FedEx. But we do have them in stock, and we're able to send them to you right now. So we're pretty pleased that we've got them, and they're ready to go. We have stores, for those of you who aren't familiar with us. We have stores in Seattle, Tacoma, Portland, Oregon, Boise, Idaho, Salt Lake City, Utah, St. George, Utah, and Las Vegas, Nevada. We service all of these states, either, again, in person or via mail system or shipping system. We've got a very large presence in Hawaii and a very large presence in California as well. So for those of you who are tuning in from those further away states, we're happy to take care of you. We're just about the end of our webinar here. If you've got some questions, this is a great time to put those into the chat box there. I think I've answered all the questions that have rolled up so far. But a couple of things that we're very excited about with the V3 RTK system is the fact that it's a much bigger, robust platform with greater opportunity to improve. It is the tool that Autel has been waiting to build since the pandemic and the chip shortage affected what they were able to build over time. One of the questions that I've got here privately is this a Chinese drone? And the answer is, this is an American company that manufactures a drone in China. Much like my Android phone here is an American company, but it's a Chinese-made product. One thing I can tell you is that Autel does not have anything like no-fly restrictions. So in other words, Autel takes the position, as do most of the professional drone companies, takes the position that you're a 107 certificated pilot. Therefore, there's no reason to request permission to fly in the United States from a foreign government. So in other words, there are no restrictions on the aircraft itself. And further to that, Autel does not have servers in China that are accessing the data that's in your drone. So your data is secure. In addition to that, in the V3 series, I did fail to mention, but it does have a 256-bit encryption scheme built into the transmission between the aircraft and the remote control ground station system. So your data is now secure, whereas in previous units or previous models, they weren't. It comes in at $3,880, and at that price, you get a hard shell Pelican type case, 3 batteries, the smart controller that we just looked at here. So there's our smart controller. That does include as well a charging block, charging stations, etc. So it's a complete package ready to go out of the box. Excuse me, if you want to step up to a more robust package, we are offering this system at $6,500 for a base station that can connect directly to the RTK system if you're out in areas where you've got spotty or no cellular coverage whatsoever. Most people use Wi-Fi from their cell phone or from a MiFi pack or some other type of internet access pack with a SIM card built into it. But failing to have one of those out in the field, you can also attach an MLID base station that will reach directly into the aircraft via the remote controller. And when you get into that system at $6,500 or so, you've got almost a business in a box. And then when we add a tool like Pix4D, which we put together in a total bundle that comes in at just under $10,000, that's a complete business in a box. It's a precision business in a box. So you'll be able to start flying construction sites or working with survey crews, et cetera, and have magnificent, very precise and accurate output. Let's see, is the Thermal camera overlay, the only way the camera will capture both thermal image and color image or RGB image simultaneously. Yes, sir, at the moment, that's what it is. We have hopes that, and it's been requested for a couple of years now, that it automatically record a thermal signal when you've got a thermal camera attached, but currently it does require both if you're going to parse them out into two separate files. Got time for one or two more questions? I appreciate the questions I'm seeing so far in the chat box there. We're going to start to wind down here. And one thing I want you to know, KR, as well, is for those of you who have seen it, we have our very famous KR catalog, and my main catalog, I think, fell on the floor. Sure enough. There we go. So this is our latest Kuker-Ranken catalog. If you want to contact us at kr@krinc.net, we'll be very happy to send one of these out to you. We've done this magazine or this catalog a little different than we've done in the past. You'll notice we've got a story about Pacific Coast Survey and how they're working with LiDAR aircraft. We've got a feature story on Building America and how they're using the Autel RTK drones in their construction workflow and how they're using it on construction sites with deep precision. Some of you may have seen the output models that we put that out. So we look forward to receiving emails from you, and we're happy to send those out. Additionally, when you send your email in looking for a catalog, ask if you can have the new KR catalog or a calendar. It's a 15-month calendar. So you've got all of 2023 and the first quarter of 2024. It has product information. It's got our 24/7 tech support line. It's got information about our rentals. So the calendar is just as jam-packed as our catalog is. We'd love to hear from you, and ship one out to you. Well, folks, thanks for tuning in this afternoon. We certainly know your time is valuable, and we appreciate you sharing some of it with us during your lunch hour. But we'll see you next Wednesday. Our next one coming up, I believe, is Matt Kowalski with the BLK 360 V2, followed by Rob Mitchell with the SmartNet Global System. That is the N-Trip network that we were talking about earlier for the RTK drones. Then on February 8th, we'll have Brady Reich doing part 2 of The Animal. That's our robot dog. So we're very excited about that. Moving to February 15th, about a month from now, we'll have Jeremy Kippen doing the first in a multi-part series with Leica Captivate. So we'll see you at the next Lunch and Learn. Have a wonderful week, everyone.